but because of the context we're in right now, where Capcom has been drawing our attention specifically to the Street Fighter V and bigger universe Street Fighter story, they have us sitting in the front of our seats like, what's going on? It's pretty clear that he's playing a super prominent role. He is key in the future of Street Fighter. With all this talk about story, I think a lot of us were expecting something, some kind of a new trail of breadcrumbs when it comes to Luke for what we can expect to see in the next Street Fighter entry. And I gotta say, guys, I felt incredibly let down.
That quote that you brought up is the one that pissed me off so much, because that has such a heavy implication of, like, we're going to find out what Luke has to do with the grand scheme of things with these other characters.
This time travel thing that they're setting up.
And it's literally like you learn that he just interacts with Guile and Byron Taylor. Like, that's literally it. He doesn't do anything else. He's just like, oh, I talked to Guile. Great, we found out what Luke's relationship is with other characters in the game. It is such the bare minimum.
The thing that they say to do is like under-promise and over-deliver. Capcom has that backwards. They over-promise and they under-deliver, especially when it comes to the plot. It's just disappointing too often.
We haven't talked about his story and his contributions to the overall story, which is something that is not normally the most important part of a new character, but because of the context we're in right now, where Capcom has been drawing our attention specifically to the Street Fighter V and bigger universe Street Fighter story, they've talked about how we're going to go back in time, it seems like, and Rose is facing this massive problem that she can't deal with in the present, and it's probably either G or connected to G, but it's all this mystery, and she's going to go back to where it sounds like Street Fighter Alpha. They have us sitting in the front of our seats like, what's going on? Then they talk about Luke as the potential protagonist, and then they haven't said that directly, but they even showed the graphic where Luke is saying hi to the other protagonists of all of the other Street Fighter entries. It's pretty clear that he's playing a super prominent role. He is key in the future of Street Fighter. With all this talk about story, I think a lot of us were expecting something, some kind of a new trail of breadcrumbs when it comes to Luke for what we can expect to see in the next Street Fighter entry. And I gotta say, guys, I felt incredibly let down. How did you feel, Steven? I know that we had some words about this. Tell the people how you feel.
Oh, hold on. Before we get to Steven, if everyone watching this doesn't mind, they can leave a like below. It actually helps out the channel a ton. Leave a like for Steven's upcoming opinion. If you don't like it, leave a like anyway, because that's how we roll here, because it helps out the channel a ton. But Steven,
while you're doing it, leave a comment about what you think about Luke's story, or if you feel like it's super lackluster and just did not deliver like I do, but and like Steven maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, Street Fighter V story is a very, very special thing. With Luke, the way that they built this character up, as John was saying, like, I really expected this to have some kind of continuation of the story, right? Like, as we were talking about, Rose has this crazy threat that's coming. She feels this threat. She knows it's there. We don't really know what it is. It could be G. It's probably Bison, but it's like, we thought we were going to get something substantial here, and Capcom has dropped several quotes that made us think that as well. Like the gravity of what this character is supposed to be. He's clearly very important to Street Fighter as a whole, right? And this is the final character of the game. This is where you close out. Like, here, okay, this is where the story closes. Here's the cliffhanger for Street Fighter 6, right? Like that's
what I wanted. It's
that's
something of like, oh, here comes something for SF6, and it's probably a bigger question than we started with, but at least it's something to chew on while we wait for that. But go ahead.
100%, and that's what they should have done. That's what it seemed like they were going to do. And instead,
in Steven, I just have to throw this out there because like people are like, well, what do you expect him to do? Like Justin, Adaptive Trigger, had a great suggestion. He's like, okay, when Luke's dad dies, have like a silhouette of G or Q.
I said
or something.
that was my idea.
Yeah. Oh, that was your idea.
Yes.
Well, you know what? I'm attributing it to Justin anyway. Screw you, man. It's his
idea. That was great
now,
when Justin said that. It was so profound. He deserves a raise.
Yeah, Justin's doing a great job on this podcast right now. It's amazing.
But so since it was your idea, go and elaborate on it now.
No, yeah, and there you go. Again, you talk about Luke's story, and like it's the most cookie cutter, bland, basic military soldier story you can get. Like, we've seen that story in every war movie that comes out, right? Like, about the soldier and all that stuff. It's like literally spoiler alert, Luke's, when he was a kid, his father was a military man and saved people at a mall from a bomb that was placed there, right? His dad isn't anybody significant as far as we know. His name is like Robert or something, right? He's just, that was my dad.
KOF.
Yeah, he saved everybody. He was a hero, and now I want to be a hero and make him proud. So Luke joins the military and meets Guile and Byron Taylor, and then he's like, well, now that I'm an adult and I learned how to fight, I don't want to be in the military anymore. I just want to go off and fight and beat every opponent that I can to, I guess, be as good of a man as my dad is. I just want to fight everybody. There's no threat or anything. I just want to fight and make my dad proud. And it's like, well, what? Like, I don't understand. Like, and that's what I was saying about, like, you want to do some kind of cliffhanger. You want to leave some kind of breadcrumbs. You have the person or whoever planted that bomb. You have like one still in the story mode where there's a silhouette standing over his dad's dead body, right? And it's like, oh, well, now I have a focus. I want to fight. I need to become a better fighter to avenge my father and fight whatever that was. And there you go. There's your boss of Street Fighter 6, or there's your main pawn in the story of Street Fighter 6, right? Like a big villain. But they didn't do that. It's literally just, my father was a soldier. He died, and
it's isolated. It's all self-contained as far as we can tell. And a lot of these little threads that could be something that connect, like you're saying, to the bigger story, it's like, whether they do or don't, it doesn't matter right now. Like maybe later on in Street Fighter 6 or whatever, they show like, oh, and this is how it connects, in the whole IED bomb terrorist thing connects to Sin or whatever it is. But right now is when you need to give something that shows people that there's that connection there. And they did none of that. They talked about story so much, and they did fill Luke's story out with details. And in fact, if you go and you read, like, there was a piece on, I think, a Capcom Unity or PS blog where Nakayama talks about the inspirations for the other costumes. It's like Luke loves basketball and he steps on the backs of his shoes too much, and like all of these little quirky things about the character, they've really thought about it, and they say, we're excited to talk about the character's story more. Here's a little bit of a glimpse, and they gave us a glimpse before he came out, how he connects. One of the things they said, his relationship with other Street Fighter V characters will become clearer once he's released. Guess what happened there? He talks to Guile a little bit. Guile says, do you want to fight me, or will you fight me? They fight. Then Luke says, I don't really want to do this military thing anymore. And Guile says, hey man, you got to do what you got to do. And that's it. There's nothing more to it. Now, if you beat the arcade mode, Luke it's post that time, and Luke's no longer in the military, and he's just kicking people's asses, and he just beats up Dan, and he's like, I'm going to avenge my father by fighting, which is a very Street Fighter thing to do.
Dude,
and then Guile shows up.
Really quickly, that quote that you brought up is the one that pissed me off so much, because that has such a heavy implication of, like, we're going to find out what Luke has to do with the grand scheme of things with these other characters.
This time travel thing that they're setting up.
And it's literally like you learn that he just interacts with Guile and Byron Taylor. Like, that's literally it. He doesn't do anything else. He's just like, oh, I talked to Guile. Great, we found out what Luke's relationship is with other characters in the game. It is such the bare minimum of fulfilling that quote.
I will throw it in there that I mostly agree with this, but I will say that, Guile's a huge character in the Street Fighter lore, and the fact that he takes a big interest in Luke, and they're probably going to team up, like, how, maybe Nash is officially gone now because his body is, whatever. And like Luke kind of takes the place of Nash, and so Guile takes, Nash under his wing like Nash took Guile under his wing. Kind of thing. And I think that they're kind of setting that up. But of course, this is like really reading between the lines, because it's a lot of maybes, ifs, and other stuff.
Know where that would have been great, John? In Luke's story mode. That would have been fantastic if they put that in there.
Well, okay, so that is in there to some degree, because Luke is like, hey, I want to quit the military. And Guile's like, do it this way. He's like, handle it this way. Go about your business this way. He is establishing himself as a father figure, for Luke, basically, taking over where, his dad would have probably been. So that is shown, but it's not done well.
Yeah, and again, this is not something that I would normally be all that upset about. No one's really watching Street Fighter or playing Street Fighter for the story, at least they haven't previously. But again, we've been hearing so much enthusiasm and been ushered. Our attention has been ushered towards the story and towards the evolution. They're talking about the future of the franchise, this cool new like direction that they're going to go in, how they're trying to level things up and kind of catch up to Mortal Kombat and other fighting games that have been really investing time into their stories and whatnot. And then you have also I should say it's not officially been stated, but the word on the street and what's generally accepted is that Street Fighter V Season 5 was not supposed to happen, but then because of delays for SF6, where they would have been working on SF6, they decided they needed to do another season of SF5. Well, what do you do if you're probably using a lot of the same assets and whatnot? Well, make this a connection into or a more effective transition into your next title, and that's what they sounded like they were setting up to do, and I feel like they did that with Rose's story and stuff.
Exactly, that's what they've been doing with the other DLC characters in Season 5, which is why this is such a, like, this is a mind-blowing moment, where it's like, this is the final character. This is a character that's going to literally be in the next game. You're building this character up to be the protagonist of the next game. He is the future. They're calling him the future of Street Fighter. And then you have his story, and it's a super self-contained thing that has nothing to do with other stories that were, you know, the grander story that's been being told with the other DLC characters, like, for the most part, right? Like, other than, I think, Akira, everybody else, like, Rose and Oro had some very pivotal moments that contributed to the grand scheme of things, right? And that's what we wanted to know about. That's what we thought Luke was going to be. So they've already started doing that with these other characters. They're bridging the gap between Street Fighter V and Street Fighter VI. And even if that was the case, where, like, you know, Season 5 wasn't supposed to happen, clearly they made a conscious decision to bridge that gap with the story. They've made a conscious effort to write this story. And then you have Luke, who's supposed to be that final, here's the cliffhanger, here is the final thing, the final, you know, connector between these two games. And then they're just like, oh, well, his dad was some nameless guy. You know, he was a soldier, and, you know, now Luke wants to be a soldier too, and then until he does it.
There's one part of his story that we haven't mentioned yet, though, and that is at the end of his arcade ending when he's beating everyone up. He beats up Dan specifically in the little comic. Guile shows back up, and he confronts Luke once again, and you go like, oh, okay, this is it. This is the after the credits sequence when, like, you know, Nick Fury shows up, and he's like, we're gonna do a whole Avengers franchise, and Guile says, Luke, you put the wrong date on your paperwork. That needs to be corrected. And Luke goes, oh, my bad. And that's it.
And that's the start of Street Fighter VI's story, guys. Correcting the paperwork. That's how we're going to start the game.
Yeah,
John, did you have any reactions to all this?
My biggest issue with this is for them to fix this is not that hard. And that's really the biggest issue here is like, look, this is not that hard to leave enough breadcrumbs here to get people interested and hyped about the game. And it's really disappointing. It's back to Capcom's old, like, what is it? The thing that they say to do is like under promise and over deliver. Capcom has that backwards. They over promise and they under deliver, especially when it comes to the plot. It's just disappointing too often. And we talk about Rose and Oro story modes as being like this incredible thing. They're good for Street Fighter V. That's it, and that's as grading on as big of a curve as it gets. So.
All right, well, Luke, pretty awesome in most ways, but man, they really set us up for that story, and then they left us with some blue feelings. That's what I'll say.
As Hercules once said, disappointed. So,
yeah, and I'm just gonna go on the record and bet that Bison was probably behind killing Luke's dad. So. That's a
bold prediction.
Yes, that's a wild prediction, right? I mean, my goodness, I'm a gambler.
Steven, have we ever heard of Bison killing someone else's dad? Because I don't know if that's a thing or not.
Yeah. Now, I would like it if Bison was his dad and said, "Luke, I am your father." Then that would be great.
Whoa! Why have we not made that joke 1,000 times yet?
That would have been good.